her claimed resume, and yet her skills were impeccable. Her organization, her communication, and her instinct for problem-solving surpassed even some of the executives at Alexander's company. Days later, during one of his clandestine observations, he noticed Emily interacting with children in a nearby community center. She read stories to them, helped with homework, and stayed long after the building was empty to clean up and leave unnoticed. Alexander's perception of her began to shift. She wasn't hiding a criminal life. She was hiding a hardship he couldn't comprehend. But the final revelation came in the most unexpected form. One rainy night, Alexander decided to follow her yet again. And this time, he saw something that broke his heart. Emily returned to a small, run-down apartment where an elderly woman, weak and frail, waited for her. The woman was Emily's grandmother, paralyzed by illness, and Emily, despite her meager salary, was caring for her single-handedly. The packages she received weren't illicit. They were deliveries of medicine and supplies she couldn't afford on her own. And there it was, the truth. Every small deception, every unexplained action was born not from malice or secrecy, but from necessity. Alexander realized the harsh world she navigated alone, balancing a demanding job, a caregiver role, and the crushing weight of financial and emotional burdens. His heart twisted with guilt. He had judged her silently, intruded upon her privacy, and allowed his curiosity to border on obsession without understanding the reality of her life. The next day, Alexander summoned Emily to his office, determined to confront the situation with honesty. But Emily, perceptive as ever, seemed to anticipate something. "Sir, I hope I haven't caused any trouble," she said quietly. Alexander leaned forward, voice steady but gentle. "Emily, I've learned more about you than I should have, and I owe you an apology. I judged without understanding, and for that, I am deeply sorry." Emily's eyes filled with tears, not of anger, but of relief. She nodded silently, as if the weight of years of struggle had finally been acknowledged. Alexander made a decision in that moment that would change both their lives forever. He offered her support, not charity, not a handout, but a chance to continue her work, care for her grandmother, and secure her future without compromising her dignity. Emily hesitated, pride warring with need, but finally accepted. Over the next months, Alexander watched her blossom, not as someone he controlled or followed, but as a human being whose resilience, courage, and intelligence had been hidden behind layers of hardship. And in a twist he hadn't expected, the relationship between them evolved, not as employer and employee, but as two souls who had learned to trust, understand, and respect each other in ways money could never buy. Alexander's obsession turned into admiration, respect, into friendship, and eventually a bond deeper than either had anticipated. The millionaire who had everything discovered that what he truly lacked was not wealth, but understanding, and Emily, the quiet woman he had once followed, taught him the greatest lesson of all. That truth, no matter how hidden, is always more powerful than appearances, and that the heart can break not from betrayal alone, but from the realization of human fragility and courage. And as the years passed, Alexander would often recall that rainy night when he first followed Emily into the unknown, realizing that the greatest fortune he had ever found was not in dollars or possessions, but in witnessing the resilience, dignity, and unyielding spirit of someone who had nothing yet gave everything, a lesson that reshaped the way he saw the world, the people in it. End of chapter. Jart. 6x of. The millionaire, Alexander Kane, was a man who had everything the world could envy: sprawling estates, luxury cars, a private jet that could circle the globe twice without refueling, and a fortune that most could only dream of in their wildest imaginings. But despite all this, Alexander had a gnawing emptiness, a quiet suspicion that people only liked him for his money, that loyalty and sincerity were commodities impossible to find in his world. It was on a dreary Tuesday afternoon, as the rain splashed against the towering glass of his office building, that he first noticed her. Emily Parker, a new administrative assistant who had been quietly working in his company for just over 6 months. Emily wasn't flashy. She wasn't the type to command attention in a room full of executives or socialites. She was unassuming, intelligent, and somehow radiated a warmth and honesty that drew people toward her without her realizing it. Something about her made Alexander uneasy yet fascinated. He couldn't pinpoint whether it was admiration or suspicion. He noticed small details others didn't. The way she paused before opening her emails, the way she hummed softly while organizing files, and the almost imperceptible traces of sadness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. Alexander had long since stopped trusting appearances, but Emily triggered something in him, a mix of curiosity and concern. He began subtly following her routines, first by coincidental encounters at the office cafeteria, then through observing her work patterns, and finally, in ways he barely admitted to himself, tracing her after hours. It started innocently enough, noting that she left the office at 6:15 every evening, that she often stopped at a small flower shop near the subway station, that she frequently carried a worn notebook filled with handwriting he couldn't yet read. But as days turned into weeks, Alexander's curiosity deepened into obsession. One evening, under the pretense of a late meeting, he decided to follow her home. He parked a block away in his blacked-out SUV, watching as she walked briskly down the sidewalk, her brown trench coat flapping in the wind, clutching her small purse tightly to her chest. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, almost as if she expected someone to be watching her. That's when the first twist struck. Emily didn't live in an upscale apartment as he had assumed. Instead, she disappeared into a narrow alley behind a crumbling building, knocking on a rusty metal door. Alexander's heartbeat quickened as he watched her enter, realizing this world was one he had never even imagined. He parked farther down the street, straining to see, and that's when he saw him, a man in a hoodie, rough and muscular, who handed Emily a small package. Alexander's mind raced. Was this some sort of crime? Smuggling? Blackmail? He couldn't be sure, but he knew one thing. Emily had a life he didn't know about, one that had nothing to do with the pristine, quiet image she maintained at the office. The next day, Alexander tried to confront her gently. "Emily," he said, keeping his voice neutral, "I noticed you were late yesterday. Everything okay?" She looked up, startled, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Everything's fine, sir," she replied softly, too soft. But the moment passed, and she returned to her work, leaving Alexander more confused than ever. Determined to uncover the truth without alarming her, he began digging deeper, researching the neighborhood she frequented, checking public records, even consulting a private investigator under the guise of a corporate security review. Each discovery led to more,